They thought they had it all under control. Routine stop, standard questions. But they weren't ready for what came next. In this video, we follow a man who stood his ground like a pro, refusing to be intimidated when faced with officers demanding answers. His calm demeanor, sharp knowledge of his rights, and strategic approach turned a tense situation into a powerful lesson for anyone wanting to understand how to navigate similar encounters. This isn't about breaking rules or disrespecting authority. It's about staying composed, knowing your legal boundaries, and handling pressure with confidence. As the conversation escalates, every move he makes keeps you on edge, wondering how it'll all end. What did he say that left the officers questioning their next steps? Could you do the same in his position? Stick around because what happens next might just change how you think about asserting your rights. The officers were direct, their voices firm, but he didn't flinch. He rolled his window down just enough to hear them, but stayed calm, almost unnervingly so. "Can I see your ID?" one of them asked, the tone making it clear they expected immediate compliance. But instead of reaching for his wallet, he simply asked, "Am I being detained?" That single question shifted the energy. You could see it in their eyes, a flicker of uncertainty, a moment where they realized this wasn't going to be as straightforward as they thought. This man wasn't aggressive, but he also wasn't backing down. He wasn't rude, but he wasn't about to give in without understanding his rights. What led him to this moment? Why was he so prepared? As the tension built, it was clear this wasn't just about the stop. It was about something much bigger. And everyone there felt it. The officer leaned in closer, his hand resting on the edge of the window. "You're required to show your ID when asked," he said, his tone sharp but measured. The man didn't waver, keeping his hands visible and his voice steady. "With all due respect, officer, unless I'm being detained or suspected of committing a crime, I believe I have the right to decline." The other officer stepped forward, clearly trying to read the situation. Was this defiance, or was it someone who knew exactly how far they could go? Meanwhile, the man remained calm, every word calculated, every action intentional. His quiet confidence was almost disarming, leaving the officers unsure whether to push harder or step back. Inside his mind, though the stakes were clear, he wasn't just standing up for himself, he was proving a point, showing that understanding your rights wasn't just important, it could shift the entire dynamic. The air felt heavier as the silence stretched between them. The officers exchanged quick glances, their patience thinning, while the man held his ground, still calm but undeniably firm. One of them stepped back, clearly trying to reassess the situation. The other, however, leaned in closer. "If you don't cooperate, this could escalate," he warned, his voice carrying an edge that hinted at frustration. The man didn't take the bait. "I hear what you're saying, officer, but I'm asking again. Am I being detained, or am I free to go?" His words were deliberate, leaving no room for misinterpretation. It was a line drawn in the sand, and everyone there knew it. The tension was almost unbearable, as though every word and every pause carried the weight of what might happen next. The officers had a choice to make. Would they push harder, or would they back off? The moment hung in the balance, and no one could predict which way it would tip. Just as it seemed the situation had reached its boiling point, another vehicle pulled up a short distance away. A man stepped out, casually but with purpose, his phone already in hand. "Everything all right here?" he called out, his voice calm but loud enough to carry. The officers froze for a moment, their focus momentarily shifting to this unexpected arrival. The man at the center of it all didn't react much, but there was a flicker of recognition in his eyes. The newcomer didn't approach too closely, but his presence was enough to shift the energy. "I'm just recording," he added, holding up his phone. Public space, right. The officers glanced at each other, clearly thrown by this sudden witness. Meanwhile, the man behind the wheel maintained his composure, as if he had anticipated something like this might happen. The tension now wasn't just between the officers and the man. It was layered with the pressure of being observed, the fear of missteps that could escalate the encounter even further. And just when it seemed they might retreat, one of the officers made a move that no one saw coming. The stakes had just been raised, and there was no turning back. The officer who had been silent until now stepped forward, his voice low but firm. "All right," he said, "if you're refusing to cooperate, we'll have to call this in." There was a pause, and then, without waiting for a response, he reached for his radio. The man behind the wheel stayed calm, his expression unreadable, but his grip on the steering wheel tightened slightly. The observer with the phone moved closer, now capturing everything, the tension in the air thick enough to cut through. But then, unexpectedly, the radio crackled, and a voice from dispatch came through. It wasn't what anyone expected. It was a directive to de-escalate the situation. If there's no probable cause, the voice said clearly, "Let him go." The officers exchanged stunned glances, their authority suddenly undercut by their own system. For a moment, no one moved, as if waiting for someone else to take charge. Finally, the first officer stepped back, his tone clipped but restrained. "You're free to go," he muttered reluctantly. The man in the car nodded politely, his voice steady as he replied, "Thank you, officer." He drove off, his calm victory leaving the officers standing in his wake. But just as the tension seemed to dissolve, the observer with the phone turned the camera on himself. "And that," he said with a sly smile, "is why you always know your rights." As he walked back to his car, he glanced at the officers one last time, his presence just as impactful as the man they had stopped. It was clear this wasn't just an isolated moment. It was a lesson, one that left everyone, even the officers, with something to think about. As the man drove away, a quiet sense of accomplishment filled the air. He didn't need to celebrate. His calm and composed handling of the situation had already spoken volumes. The observer got back into his own car, glancing at the officers one last time before leaving. It was clear that this encounter wasn't just about one man standing up for his rights. It was a reminder of how knowledge and composure can shift the balance in moments of uncertainty. For the officers, the encounter seemed to linger. Perhaps they were reflecting on how things could have gone differently, or realizing the power of accountability in today's world. For viewers, it's a moment to think about what it means to know your rights and stay calm under pressure. In the end, this wasn't just a story about conflict. It was about empowerment, awareness, and the simple truth that respect and preparation can go a long way.